I've been working armed security for nearly a decade now, but I still remember working unarmed when I started out in my early 20s. I worked my way to a trusted position with my agency where at 20 years old I was assigned to the Colorado Springs Deaf and Blind School. At the time, only senior and more experienced officers were permitted to work there at all, but I was given the 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. shifts Monday nights through Saturday mornings. A little backstory on the Deaf and Blind School. It was opened in the early 1870s and was where the burdened children of the state were sent to learn and live. But many were put to work there as laborers working fields or manufacturing items. Because of a number of ailments, accidents, or pre-existing health conditions, a large number of children and staff passed while they were there, to where in the early 1880s a small cemetery was created, and formerly at the intersection of Pikes Peak Avenue and Institute Street. Growing up in Colorado Springs, I was always told ghost stories about the flesh-eating bacteria on stuffed taxidermy animals, ghosts walking in buildings, and the haunted service tunnels below the school connecting to the old train depot. But I never really believed it. Fast forward to my third month posted there, 2 nights before my 21st birthday, and a full week before students returned for the fall semester for actual special needs schooling, and I had my first encounter in the gym. While checking the boys' locker room, a solid black figure ran past the showers. I rushed to find the intruder, not knowing what I would have done to it if I found it, as I was completely unarmed, except for a flashlight. After clearing the building twice and checking all the doors multiple times, I just took it as my imagination. The night of my birthday is when everything got much weirder. The shift change went as normal, and everything was fine, up until my 2:30 a.m. property and building checks. When I went into the carriage house's top floor, where the school stores all the spare desks and modern school equipment, it appeared that a person was standing in the back corner near the old stairs. I shouted at the figure and began to charge towards him. In a frenzy, I hurried to cut him off at the first floor door, but when I got to the door, it was still locked with the interior bolt. I searched the first floor when I found the doors to the service tunnels opened. On my first day, I was told not to enter the tunnels alone, as they expanded for miles in a labyrinth, and before I went in, I didn't contact a supervisor. I felt as if I walked for hours, but after only a few minutes, I heard in a very soft voice, almost like a kid's voice, "Happy birthday, Mr. Officer." The next thing I knew, my very angry supervisor, the school's maintenance director, and 2 CSPD officers were shaking me by my shoulders. My supervisor then informed me I missed my 3 a.m. check-in and was sitting in a corner of the tunnels in the dark for over 3 hours. We all left the tunnels and carriage house to see that the sun was beginning to rise. Later that day, my boss reassigned me to a different location after I was cleared from a doctor to work. I don't fully know what I saw or what was in those buildings, but it still gives me the chills. I'll never forget the voice that made me black out for so long. Happy birthday, Mr. Officer. It was a dark and eerie night deep in the heart of a clinic where I was working during the night shift. Now this clinic, much like a hospital, requires insurance or payment for its services, and during the night, I stood as the sole administrative staff responsible for dealing with insurance matters and handling the charges. As the clock ticked towards midnight on October 31st, a feeling of unease began to settle upon me, and I sensed that something out of the ordinary was about to happen. The clinic was a big place, but only a small portion of it was currently in use due to the economic crisis that plagued our country. The ground floor housed the active section, consisting of 22 patient rooms, an emergency room, an x-ray area, and a laboratory. On the second floor, there were vacant doctor's offices and additional patient rooms, as well as 2 unused operating rooms. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I was talking with a friend, the x-ray technician, when we heard some sounds coming from the doctor's office on the second floor. Footsteps echoed through the halls, along with the closing of drawers and rustling of papers. Now my initial thought was that one of the security guards must have been present on the second floor, maybe watching television in the waiting area. But when I glanced at my friend, I realized that he too was taken aback by the noises. He told me that both security guards were stationed elsewhere with the nurses. Fear gripped my heart as we continued to hear these mysterious movements. I asked my friend to accompany me as we walked out of my office. The noises persisted, albeit somewhat less noisy as we approached the others. We told a bizarre occurrence to the security guards, who went up to the second floor to investigate, but found nothing. It was impossible for anyone to access the second floor without passing my office, and all the staff and patients were accounted for. We were left bewildered and unnerved by these events. As the night wore on, and the clock struck 2 a.m. on November 1st, a man entered our clinic. He carried with him a sample for a blood exam for the laboratory. This man, there was something about him, an aura of mystery that sent shivers down my spine. He appeared to be an ordinary middle-aged gentleman with unusually large eyes that seemed to scrutinize us without saying a single word. The discomfort that came from him was intense, though I can't say if others shared my unease. At approximately 2:40 a.m., the man's blood test results were ready, and he prepared to leave. Just as he reached the doorway, he abruptly turned back towards us, his piercing gaze fixed upon an empty chair near one of the security guards, and with an air of certainty he said, "There's a dead woman sitting among you right there," pointing to the vacant seat, "and you know it to be true," then pointing his finger at the security guard. Everybody went silent, looking at the accused security guard, who then rose from his seat. The accused guard attempted to diffuse the tension with a nervous laugh and opened the door for the departing man. As you can imagine, we were left in a state of shock and terror. The nurse, the X-ray technician, and I were particularly disturbed by what the man said. The second security guard, consumed by fear, went into the clinic's chapel, while the bioanalyst and her assistant also went to rest. The remaining few of us, the X-ray technician, the nurse, the cleaning lady, the remaining security guard and myself huddled together outside my office, trying to stay calm in one another's presence. Now the hour was nearing 3:30 a.m., and a chilling stillness came over the clinic. To our right, a staircase led to the second floor, where we had previously heard the noises. Yet on this occasion, all was quiet, save for the whispers and murmurs that passed between us. The nurse and I found ourselves sitting closest to the stairs, engaged in a hushed conversation. It was then when we heard it. The unmistakable sounds of footsteps coming down the staircase. Our eyes met, wide with shock. The steps were so real, so vivid, as if a living person were making its way towards us. We strained our eyes to catch a glimpse of the figure descending the stairs. But to our horror, the footsteps stopped, and no one was there. We exchanged terrified glances, our disbelief mirrored by the X-ray technician, who also heard the steps. The others, engrossed in their own conversations, remained oblivious to what just happened. With pounding hearts, we reluctantly decided to retire for the night, seeking refuge from the inexplicable terrors that haunted us. Though these encounters may seem like nothing to some, it was the phantom footsteps that served as undeniable proof for me, confirming the existence of the unseen and inexplicable. I'm from Germany and worked at an old people's home in a little German town at the time. The facility was in a rural area on the outskirts of town. One night I had a night shift with a new coworker I've never worked with before. He was in his mid-50s, wearing little round glasses, and for some reason seemed a little strange to me at first sight. There were always only 2 workers alone in the facility at night, and our job was to watch over 100 rooms on 3 floors, and make control rounds throughout the whole facility. We weren't allowed to use the elevators for security reasons at night, and had to use the stairway instead. I remember the strange weather that night. It was stormy and wild outside when my shift started at about 10 p.m. At this time, most of the personnel were gone, and only an older nurse was in the station room on the second floor, where we had our headquarters at night. She wasn't used to the newer PC programs, and it took her longer to finish her writing stuff. Me and my coworker started our first round through the house using the stairways, which had heavy doors we had to close slowly and carefully every time to avoid noise. Everything was quiet. Most old people were sleeping already, and after we checked all the rooms, we sat down in the second floor station room and finished some paperwork. Old nurse had gotten all doors to the outside shut, and the house was completely quiet when we were sitting on the table. After 15 minutes sitting in the quiet, suddenly a heavy door in the stairway was smashed hard. We looked at each other without saying anything and immediately ran in the stairway. I ran up the 3rd floor and my workmate sprinted down on the ground floor. We saw nothing and nobody. We even checked the stairway windows, all of which were closed. Someone must have been in the stairway. As we found nothing, we continued our tour, starting from the 3rd floor down to the ground floor. From there on, I could not stop thinking who the hell would sneak around the floors in the middle of the night. It was about 2 a.m. when we had to change the double sheets from an old invalid man who pissed in his bed. I stood in the corner of the room beside the bed, backed up against the wall. My coworker was on the other side of the bed. I remember watching the door, waiting for someone to peer into the room. While I was concentrating on the door and lost in my thoughts, suddenly my coworker freaked out, screaming at the old man out of nothing, ripping around the sheets and tossing around the old man. His face got an angry, creepy look, and I was totally shocked and not able to say or do anything. I just watched this creepy guy in front of me with the totally black windows behind him and the door leading to the dark floors where some freaks sneaked around unseen. I stood there pressed against the wall in the corner of that room and felt totally lost, surrounded by psychopaths. We finally reached the ground floor and everything was quiet, only the wind blowing around the house. Suddenly we heard a dropping sound, like someone dropped a knife or something metallic. The sound came from the kitchen area. We ran to the closed glass door where the sound came from. It was a long, dark hallway with a back door leading to the trash cans and a parking lot at the end. We opened that door and searched every single room. I felt extremely uncomfortable and expected an attack every moment. Again, we found nothing. Some hours later, we started our last tour for this night. We split up this time and I checked the rooms like usual. When I looked in one room, an old lady was awake and sat on her bed. She asked me if I was in her room 5 minutes ago. I said no, and that we just started our tour. She told me that 5 minutes ago she clearly heard someone enter her room. She asked who was there, but did not get any answer back. Then the door was closed again. I got a creepy feeling while listening to the old lady. I told her to push the alarm button next time something like this happens again. I think it's necessary to say how I felt for the next few hours of the night, every time I entered a room or walked around a corner. I expected some stranger standing there all the time. I was more than glad when this damn shift was over. Some days later, I met the old nurse who left the facility late at night and told her the story. She told me that the back door to the kitchen area was wide open when she went to her car that night. She reached the open dark back door from the parking lot and called if somebody was there. Suddenly she got a very, very bad feeling, so she turned around, ran to her car and drove off as fast as she could. She was so scared and tried to reach and warn us but couldn't find the number. I told her that the back door was definitely closed when we checked the area. We never found out what creepy freaks sneaked around there at night, and many night shift workers reported a similar experience the following month. The coworker I had to work with that night was fired after more and more complaints about him emerged over time. Anyways, I'm glad I don't have to work there anymore. Never will take any night shifts myself again.